Hi there, my name is Blacklock. I'm a Master P.G.A professional based in Milton Keynes in England, and I'm in my indoor teaching studio in north of Milton Keynes, and this is my GC2 simulator. Now, one of my coaching heroes is a guy called Lee Cox, and Lee is based down at the Shire Club just north of London, and he's renowned for teaching people how to hit the ball extreme distances. Yeah, he coaches Joe Miller, who's the world long driving champion on a number of occasions, and lots of others. So Lee specialises in distance and long driving. Some pros, like Phil Kenyon, they major on putting. So you can find an expert in every given department. If you said to me what was my specialist subject, I'd probably say using the driver for power and accuracy. Not that I hit the ball a long way, but I know enough about the driver swing now after 50 years of coaching. I know how to make it go in the fairway to my optimum distance. Now, here's a simple picture that I want to share with you, and I shared this with Lee Cox as a concept, and it was something that he was aware of, but he hadn't heard anybody else talk about it the way that I did. So here's a fence post, and here's a hammer or a mallet, and that is me driving it into the ground. Now that's a miss entirely, and that's a glancing blow. Neither of those are ideal. We want the blow that's in plane. Now, I can make that motion a bit like Bryson Dechambeau, with no wrist hinge. I'm in plane, but there's no wrist hinge. If I allow the wrist to cock, I can then release. Now, if I show you the golf swing at the horizontal level, okay, the wrist cock, okay, the wrist cock doesn't work for hitting the ball. You have to have wrist cock and forearm rotation. So there's wrist cock by itself. It's not part of the golf swing. You need wrist cock and forearm rotation. So when you get to the top, the wrist that have cocked can unload, and there's that extra speed. Now, Bryson Dechambeau is looking for a one-plane, simple mechanism that has almost no wrist cock. So what happens with the driver is that he creates this line in the belief that that line is the same at the top of the swing. Now, you've only got to watch Bryson's swing on slow motion, face on, in a tournament, and although he is one plane at address, you will see there is still 9 degrees of wrist hinge. So that does come out on the way in. So if I swing to you on the camera, that movement, that speed, that extra wrist hinge, this wrist cock that occurred in the backswing unravels in the downswing. I'll do it in slow motion for you down the line. So Bryson goes back one plane, okay, the wrists do hinge a little bit, then he starts to pull down. All of a sudden, he's pretty like everyone else. There is a wrist cock here. He comes in, the speed lifts the shaft, but again, late in the follow through, the wrists will hinge a little bit. So Bryson is the least wristy, but for us, as lesser mortals, if we suppress the wrist back and through, we will lose distance. And you might say to me, Luther, if I start cocking my wrist, I'm going to lose accuracy. No, you're not. You're going to be more accurate with wrist cock than without it. Okay, so let's go back. And what I just want to emphasize here is, sure, Bryson Dechambeau sees the swing as one plane. Okay, he may think there's no wrist hinge there. Watch him in slow motion. Massive shoulder turn and wrist cock. And even if he didn't have wrist cock here, by the time he's pulled and made the transfer, this starts to cock, and that means it can uncock with speed in the downswing. So this is something that Lee Cox and myself discussed, and I talked about this wrist cock. Well, wrist cock is great, but you can see it doesn't work in the golf swing until the forearms rotate. So all of a sudden, you've got two elements. You've got wrist cock and forearm rotation. Okay, then you add in the third, which is the shoulder turn. So there's wrist cock, forearm rotation, shoulder turn. Now, you start to build up power and speed because you've got three sources. You've got your shoulder turn, you've got your forearm rotation, you've got your wrist cock. And Bryson Dechambeau is doing his very best to keep the string one plane, and off we go. Massive shoulder turn. Just blocked it out there a little bit, but for me, hitting the ball 250 through the air is about as good as I can do. Now remember, how much wrist cock, if you have a conventional set of golf clubs, the club maker chooses. So with a wedge, he's asking you to be wristy and non-rolly, and with a driver, he's saying, okay, same shoulder turn, going to be rolling non-wristy. So don't think the swing's a groove. You know, golf clubs are made to do certain jobs, and as Bryson is proving, if you've got a one-plane motion and you're an athlete, then 350 yards through the air is definitely a possibility.